Hey Eagle fans, I'm Mott. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now. Today's video, all about the wide receiver depth chart. It's changed a lot since we last saw it in 2020. Though, use the hashtag Eagles down below right now in the comment section. Another mailbag video is coming up, and our subscribers are going to get their questions answered. At least, a very good chance of getting your question answered. So go down below right now, use the hashtag Eagles, and ask away. All right, Eagle fans, let's jump into my latest Eagle video today, all about the Eagles' 2021 wide receiver group in terms of the depth chart, the expectations, and what we should be looking forward to going into training camp, because this is, I think, one of the more improved positional groups that Philadelphia has had based on what it was in 2020 to what it is here in 2021. And it all is because they actually got a legit number one wide receiver in DeVonta Smith. We'll talk more about him in a second. But this is a group that not only needs to be good, but needs to be good not just for themselves, but for Jalen Hurts as well, because Hurts' success is going to be directly linked to how good this very young but explosive wide receiver core can potentially be. So quickly, depth chart. This is what it looks like right now. My prediction for the first four wide receivers are Smith, Reagor, Greg Ward, and Travis Fulgham. Now, they're going to be moving around right now, and obviously any one of those guys can have the number 2 slot, 3 slot, 4 slot, outside, inside, whatever it is, but those are your starting four. The rest of these receivers, it's open competition. I mean, it's open season in training camp. Any one of these guys, in terms of Arcega-Whiteside, Hightower, Quez, Watkins, Trevon, Grimes, Khalil Tate, and Jhamon Ausbon, can all be cut or make the team. So we'll wait and see what happens with those guys. But that is your wide receiver group. And again, not a lot of experience. Very, very young guys right now. Your most experienced guy on the roster, is Greg Ward. Other than that, though, if they can become explosive and quick like we expect them to, it could be a very, very good wide receiver class. All right, let's start with your number one wide receiver. Obviously, it's DeVonta Smith, right? He immediately vaults into the number one slot, even though he's not played a single down in both Philadelphia or the National Football League. Why? Not only was he the number 10 overall draft pick in this year's draft class, Heisman Trophy winner, but he's better in terms of overall skill than any other receiver on the depth chart. Does that mean he's going to be guaranteed the number one guy in terms of the fact that he's going to have 10 touchdowns and have 1,000 yards receiving? Maybe not his rookie year, but the expectations are sky high right now, and he has a lot to go ahead and live up to. The expectation is hopefully he can make an immediate impact, right? And a lot of rookie wide receivers don't make immediate impacts. You've got a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. was one of the last young rookie wide receivers to explode onto the scene in his first year, but the expectations there are still very high. DeVonta Smith has a lot of pressure, and like I just mentioned, right? Not just because he was the number 10 overall pick, and not just because he was the Heisman Trophy winner, it's because he plays in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia has not had a true number one wide receiver, I guess, since Alshon Jeffrey, in terms of peak Alshon Jeffrey in 2017, but even then, he was only there for a short amount of time. I mean, the last time they had a legitimate outside threat that had been there for years and years and years, I mean, I don't know if I can name one of them right now, because T.O. was only there for 1 year. They have not had a legitimate year after year after year threat at the number one wide receiver, and so Smith is expected to be that. I mean, that is why they went ahead and drafted him, moved up from 12 to number 10 to go ahead and take him. He should be able to live up to expectations. I mean, everything you see on the football field is that this kid is one of the best wide receivers we have seen come out in a long time. People compare him to Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne. I mean, he's supposed to be really, really good, but the expectations are high. He's going to have a lot of pressure, and I hope he is going to be able to, live up to those expectations. How many touchdowns will Smith have in 2021? What do you guys think? Hopefully it's more than 6. I think more than 6 means you have a successful rookie year. Less than 6, either you're not that good or you had a lot of injuries. Will go either way. Let me know how many touchdowns you guys think Smith will have down below right now. All right, your number 2 wide receiver, again, could be any one of 3 options right now. We're going to put Jalen Reagor in that spot. Why? Because he should be the number 2 option. He should be competing for the number 1 slot on the Eagles wide receiver depth chart based on the fact that he was a first-round draft pick back last year in 2020. Now, he was injured. He missed 5 games, and so that's going ahead and hurt his overall stats. But really, when he was in there, he could not get him the football. He couldn't get open, and he just wasn't a factor at all. And it was shocking to see a guy who was so explosive on film do basically nothing for Philadelphia. So the expectation is not only that he will work more in the slot in 2021, but he'll have a lot better year and really kind of come into his own in 2021, because guess what? He needs to. Again, you're looking right now, you're comparing him to Justin Jefferson, who's taken a couple of picks after, who essentially should have been the pick. We all understand that now. And Reagor's, 1 measly touchdown and 31 catches over 10, 11 11 games in 2020 is nowhere near what Justin Jefferson was able to do as the best young wide receiver in the NFL. And so Reagor has got to live up to the expectations. I think he will. I think the pressure is going to come off him a little bit just because DeVonta Smith is going to be the number one guy right now, and you have other receivers that are going to be options alongside a guy like Jalen Reagor. But it's a make or break year. If he struggles this year, I mean, you're just going to keep him on the roster going into year 3. I guess you have to due to a rookie contract, but he has got to play up to his caliber of play that you drafted him for, or else it's another bust in the Howie Roseman draft bust list, and this one's going to look pretty darn bad. Especially due to the fact that Justin Jefferson was available and could have been drafted with that pick. Who will have more catches in 2021? I think a good comparison would be Jalen Reagor or Travis Fulgham. Type R down below for Reagor or type F down below for Fulgham. Let me know what you guys think in terms of these two young receivers down below right now. Okay, before we go ahead and keep going, subscribe to Philadelphia Eagles now as we approach 20,000 subs because we're doing more videos like this. It's not just news and rumors. It's not just mailbags. We also take an in-depth look at position groups. We did running backs a couple of weeks ago. You guys liked that video a lot. Here's wide receivers, and I'm sure we'll do more in the coming weeks as the offseason is fully upon us. And listen, a couple days ago, you had the, early yesterday, you had the Ryan Kerrigan signing, and we immediately had a video up breaking it all down. So for videos like that and more, go down below and subscribe. Let's jump into wide receiver number 3, who I am very excited to watch in 2021, and that is Travis Fulgham. Now, you would go back to 2020 and you think about, well, Fulgham was a number 1 starting wide receiver, maybe not number 1, but he was a starting wide receiver for Philadelphia for the majority of the year, and yet, where did he come from? Like, you start to think about, wait a second, this guy was a practice squad signing who was claimed off of waivers before the start of the year and burst onto the scene in that Sunday Night Football game early on in the season. We had his first catch and first touchdown against San Francisco on the road. He had that incredible 4-game stretch from like week 4 to 8 where he was the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL in terms of total yards. Kind of fell off towards the latter half of the year, maybe due to Carson Wentz's struggles, maybe due to Jalen Hurts and no chemistry connections there, but he has some pretty high expectations going into this year because he's built like a number 1 wide receiver. He's played at times last year like a number 1 wide receiver and could be a massive, massive contributor on the offensive side of the football, at least from a big body, deep threat frame that, of course, he carries on himself. Now, an instance of how great he has been in some games, look at the Giants game in 2020. 10 catches, 1 touchdown, a $152, 15.2 yards per catch. And if you can start duplicating that week in and week out, you have a legit number 1 threat to go alongside Jalen Reagor and go alongside DeVonta Smith, right? You see where I'm going with this? Best case scenarios for a guy like Travis Fulgham in the Eagles offense is that they all play up to their caliber of play, and you have an incredible group of wide receivers. I mean, he was even, not just the Giants game, but the overall stats, as you've seen on your screen, he still was able to contribute at times, and so you go back to the idea that he has all the tools, right? Fulgham has all the tools to be an elite receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, and a really, really good one who's also very, very cheap because he was an undrafted guy and a practice squad signing. He just needs to put them all together, and I think an overall full offseason with full OTAs and full training camp and being a guy in a starting role is going to help him out and hopefully get him higher than what he did in 2020 in terms of the couple of games where he did fall off and like wasn't targeted or didn't have a catch. And that did happen, even though weeks 4 through 8 he was great. A little bit after that, he started to kind of fall off a cliff just a little bit. So again, hopes are high for all these young wide receivers, but I'd say they're really high for Travis Fulgham. He's a fan favorite in Philadelphia, has, playing with house money, being an undrafted guy in terms of Howie Roseman in the front office. If you get production from him, great. You get it for cheap. If not, then someone else will go ahead and slide up and take that place. Okay, before we go ahead and keep going, quick shout out to Newsbreak and the Newsbreak app here on today's video, which you should have downloaded to your iPhone or Android device right now in order to get great localized content, whether it's local news, weather, sports, politics, and more, all in a nice, condensed, easy app feed that you're going to absolutely fall in love with. Now, to download it, go to chatsports.com/EaglesNB. That link will be down below me right now and in the description box. And then whenever you're there, just put in your zip code and all that localized content from local newspapers or local weather stations or local sports teams will all be put there for you guys to go ahead and subscribe to. Fills up your feed, and then you get all of it at the touch of a button. Now, you can also follow us, Eagles Now by Chat Sports, by searching us on the Newsbreak app, and all of my videos will pop up on your feed as well. Again, download the app, Eagles, or chatsports.com/EaglesNB, and then, of course, go ahead and put your zip code in and follow us, Eagles Now by Chat Sports. The link will be down below right now in the description box. All right, let's move over here to Greg Ward Jr., who He's the former practice squad quarterback who's been a really consistent receiver, maybe the most consistent receiver in the Eagles' arsenal the past couple of years, despite being an undrafted free agent and really a nobody. But I do think he's going to see some limited snaps and limited reps this year just because, you want to see what Fulgham can do. And hopefully Reagor's going to be healthy and good to go. And you got DeVonta Smith, and so he's got to work hard to go ahead and keep the amount of reps that he's had over the past couple of seasons. It's not a bad thing to see less snaps for Greg Ward, but I would like to see him still compete because he was a really good receiver and has been one of the better ones in Philly, as I mentioned. Just in 2020 alone, 53 catches, almost double what Jalen Reagor had, 419 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's a scrappy guy. He can play in the slot, and he kind of gets those short yardage conversions that you want from an inside wide receiver. Again, you're paying him basically nothing, and so any production you get from Greg Ward is a plus. He's a big fan favorite in Philadelphia as well, but I do think that the numbers and the overall production might come down a little bit, especially if the other receivers play better, which Eagle fans shouldn't be too upset about because if Fulgham's playing better, he's a better overall, I think, piece and a better overall weapon than Greg Ward. And the same goes for Reagor, who you actually spent a draft pick on, and obviously DeVonta Smith. So the hopes are going to be that Ward continues to be a target and a feature in this offense, but it's a feature in an offense where he's not the number one guy because he really shouldn't be the number one guy in the Eagles' arsenal. All right, final player we'll focus in on here, and then we'll look at the rest kind of in one big grouping. It's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who I've given up hope for. I think the former second-round draft pick is a bust. I think he's one of the purest busts that Howie Roseman has had in a very, very long time. Some of them at least would contribute a little bit, and they're still being considered bust. Whiteside has done nothing. He's never lived up to expectations, and there's a very good chance he could be cut by the end of training camp because there are other younger wide receivers. I know that obviously there's still a contract there because he's still on his rookie deal, but we've gotten to the point where it's make or break time. And if he's trash in training camp in the preseason, I think you got to cut him and just cut your losses and admit that it was wrong to take him over a guy like DK Metcalf, obviously. 2020, look at these numbers. A lot of times he didn't even play. 4 catches in 2020 on 8 targets. That's it. Literally, less than 100 yards. This is a second-round draft pick who was an absolute bust. He has the same frame as like a Trevon Grimes or a Travis Fulgham, but those two guys are probably going to be more productive, and so why even keep Whiteside in a roster spot if he's going to give this kind of number and this kind of production from, again, a second-round draft pick? So give him a chance. Maybe this is the year, third time's the charm, right, for him to go ahead and pop, and I hope he does, right? Nothing against him. I just have seen enough to think that probably got a bust here, and he might not make the roster in the end. All right, quickly, the other 5 receivers on the roster, we mentioned them a little bit earlier. A couple of notes here. John Hightower, he got in the game more than anybody else on the list, more than Quez Watkins, but very inconsistent. Had a lot of drops, too. He was open. The drops were a big issue. I'm not sure Watkins is going to make the roster. He didn't do much at all last year. The speed is there, but that's about it. I think Trevon Grimes, I'd much rather have him than Quez Watkins because the frame is unbelievable on this Florida wide receiver, and the former Florida offensive coordinator is now the wide receivers coach in Philadelphia, so there's a good connection there. And then the other 2 are going to be practice squad guys or guys that don't even go overhead and make the roster. There you go. There is your full in-depth breakdown of the current Eagles wide receiver depth chart. What do you think? How does it look? Grade the room on a scale from 0 to 100. 100 being like, this is the best wide receiver core in the NFL. 0 being like, not that great, but we'll just see what happens. I'm putting it right now at a 65 to a 70 because I really want them to be good. I think they can get up to an 80 if the talent turns out to be what we expect it to be, but that's a big expectation for a lot of young wide receivers and a young quarterback in Jalen Hurts.